Alright, what is going on, guys? So today we're going to be changing out the rear differential fluid on my E36. I've been wanting to change the diff fluid on this car for a little while, and I think we're going to get to it today. So my car is a 97 M3. It has a 3.38 limited slip diff in it, and I'm going to be using a Mobil 1 75 weight 140 for a limited slip. A lot of times you'll see 75 140 NS, that means for non-limited slip, basically for non-limited slip differentials. If you have an LSD, you definitely want to get the limited slip gear oil. And as far as I know, you don't really need to use a diff additive as long as you get the proper gear oil. Now I see some debate online between 7590 and 75-140, and I believe the E36s, they used to recommend 7590, at least in the M3s, and then I think BMW switched it up to 75-140, so we're going to run the 75-140. So if you have a limited slip, you do want to get the limited slip fluid. So on the back here it says both conventional and limited slip application. So that is the limited slip fluid. It is a API GL5 fluid. So we're gonna run this bad boy. I believe the total capacity is like 1.8 quarts or something, so I bought 2 quarts and we're just gonna go until it's full. Often on these cars, probably the most mechanically unmaintained part of an E36 typically is the limited slip diff or the differential in general. I see a lot of people doing all these oil changes and all this stuff, but hardly anyone ever touches the diff, and I don't know why. I think a lot of people think it's a difficult job. It really isn't that hard. And I think in all, including the tools, I only spent about 50 bucks on everything, including fluid. So you guys do need to change the fluid in your diffs if you haven't since purchasing the car, or if it's been a while. It only takes like 20 something minutes. It's really easy to do, and it can definitely extend the life of your differential. If you haven't changed your diff fluid, change your diff fluid. It's not hard. Tools we will be using: a jack, 4 jack stands. You want to get the car completely level up in the air. I'll explain that a little bit more in detail in a minute. And an oil drain catch to catch all of the used fluid coming out. We will also need 2 quarts of fluid. I believe the capacity for the differential is about 1.8 quarts. So I'm going to be using 75 weight 140 again, Mobil 1 limited slip diff, all that good stuff. And there's a little oil pump on top of that, a little hand pump. I think one of those is about 5 to 10 bucks. They have them at just about every auto parts store, and you will need one to be able to get the fluid up. I have a little 14mm Allen key socket. I got that in a set of, I believe, 8 or 10 other sockets to get the fill plug and the drain plug out. We will also need a 1/2-inch driver. If you have a 14mm like that in 3/8, you could also use a 3/8 driver. That is to get the drain plug out in coordination with that 14. And I have a 9/16 open end box end wrench. We're going to be using that to pull the fill plug out. Ideally, you should be using a 14mm socket instead of a 9/16. I just lost my 14mm, so I'm using the 9/16 instead. But if you have a 14mm, use that over a 9/16. A 9/16 will work. A 14mm will work a lot better. Now the first thing we're going to need to do to change the fluid is get the car up in the air. Not just on the back, but on the front too. You want the car to be sitting up in the air perfectly level. You do not want to jack up just the back end. You want to jack up the whole car to get it off the ground evenly. For the sake of the argument, let's say this is your differential. So you have your drive shaft coming in and then your axles on each side coming out. Let's pretend this is the diff. Now on the back side of the diff, you have a drain plug right there and a fill plug right there. So basically, to get the fluid out, we're just going to pull the drain plug out. All the fluid is going to come out, and then we're going to put fluid in through the fill plug. But to understand why it needs to be level, when you add fluid to a diff, the diff is supposed to be sitting straight up and down. That's why you get the car perfectly level. So you just add fluid until it starts pouring out of this hole. Now, if the differential is sitting perfectly flat, like if you raise the car up perfectly flat, you're going to have a line of fluid right at the fill plug level, right? Now if you jack up just the rear end, your differential is going to be tilted a bit, and that line of fluid is going to reflect that, right? So if you have it just jacked up by the rear end and not the front end, you're going to be adding too much fluid into the diff. So you want to make sure the car is perfectly straight up and down, and you jack it up from both ends, not just the rear, because that's going to be too much fluid if you just jack it up from the back, and that might cause issues. So make sure the car is level. You can use jack stands, you can use wheel ramps on all 4. It doesn't matter how you get it level, just make sure it is level. Now another thing to note when you're changing the fluid in a differential or in a manual transmission, you always take the fill plug out first. Always, always, always. There are a couple reasons for this. One, if you can't get the fill plug out because it's seized or you don't have the tools to get it out, you want to know that before you drain the diff. Because if you drain the diff and then you try and take the fill plug out and realize you can't get it out, you can't drive this car to go get tools or to go get like PB Blaster or anything to help you get it out because you drained the fluid out already, and it's just gonna be a nightmare. If this is your only car, you don't want it to be down, because if you drive this thing without fluid in the diff, you're going to absolutely destroy the differential. So always take the fill plug out first. Not to mention, having the fill plug out is going to allow air into the diff, so it's going to drain a lot more smooth. You're not going to have like the air bubbles coming in and out. It's just going to be one smooth drain all the way out. So same thing with manual transmissions, always take the fill plug out first. I kind of relate to it as like why you should always change the oil filter before you drain the oil, because if you drain the oil and realize you bought the wrong oil filter or the oil filter doesn't fit, now you're going to be running an old filter with brand new oil, or you're going to have to put all that old oil back in your motor. So if you're going to be draining the diff or draining the trans or anything like that, always take the fill plug out first. Alright, so now that we got the car in there, we need to put the drain catch underneath the diff. Boom. Alright, so now we're going to take the fill plug out. So that right there is the fill plug, and that right there is the drain plug. It is a 14 millimeter, and I got this guy in a set from Harbor Freight. I think it was like 10 bucks or something like that. And if you'll notice, if you have it on a 1/2-inch driver, you're not, that's not a thing. That's not gonna fit because the spare tire tunnel is under there. And there's no real good way to get one of these things with a ratchet on there. If you get like a really short one, there's a good chance you could get one on with the 3/8. But I'm gonna show you guys a little trick. So you take your 14, you put that boy in the fill plug. Now you should be using a 14 millimeter socket. I don't know where mine is, so I have a 9/16, so if I strip it, it's all me. I take blame for that, but we're gonna take the little wrench, the open end, and stick it right there. You guys see that? So the little bit of that Allen key sticks out. We're gonna stick that boy right there. Boom. And now our fill plug can come out. A little bit coming out already. And then we can go after our drain. Ooh, diff fluid smells bad. Gear oil does not smell good, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're gonna let it fly. And I always like to give the drain and fill plug a nice clean while they're out. Alright, now once that's done and draining, I'm gonna wipe down the little mating surface for that. And we're going to stick our drain plug back in. Right. Alright. Now for the fun part. I picked this bad boy up from, I believe it was either Pep Boys or AutoZone or something like that. So we're going to open this guy up. So we're going to take a little pump. Our pickup tube is going to go in like that. And this boy is going to in and thread like that. And now we're just going to stick this end inside the diff and pump. You guys see that? So now we're just going to go in there and just pump this thing until it's all the way full and fluid starts coming back out of the diff. Alright. Stick that bad boy in there. So it's almost out. The pickup tube in this setup doesn't reach all the way at the bottom. So there's still some fluid in there, but I'm getting a lot more air bubbles. So this bottle is just about empty. So if you'll notice, there's a little bit left in this guy, but the tube only hangs out about that far, so it's not getting the rest of that. So open the bottle. And if you'll notice on the new one, it's only about that full. They don't fill these all the way to the top. and then we could pour the remainder into the new bottle. But that way, we should have enough. Alright. Back at it. Alright, so we're getting to where it's pretty much full, and if you'll notice, you'll see a little bit starting to pour out. So let's see here. So there's a good bit coming out. I usually like to cap it and call it when it's got like a nice light stream going. So you don't want it to be like gushing out, but it's got like a nice small little stream here going. So I think that's pretty good. It's not like a ton coming out. It's just nice light. If you have just like a little bit too much, it's not going to be a huge issue, but you don't want to put like half a quart over, something like that. So we're gonna call it right there. I also know I have the front end of the car a little bit higher than the back end, so a little bit more like that isn't too bad. If you'll note, when I pulled the fill plug out, a little bit came out in the first place. So putting it back in when there's a little bit coming out is like perfect. So if you take your fill plug out and none comes out, then I would sort of wait a little bit longer till that stream dies down more. But right there should be good. So we're gonna take our fill plug and get that tight. The same way we took it off. All right. Gonna wipe that bad boy down. And that's it. Alright, that is it. Our differential fluid is changed. Thank you guys so much for watching. Keep it fresh, and I'll see you guys later.
We are dreaming in the dark. We are nothing more than dust. Search but you stay lost. We are